Man, that Bryce Mitchell, he's a funky man, isn't he? Opens this fight against Dan Ige, which he has won by decision, listeners, by grabbing the Bible from one of his cornermen, holding it in the air and yelling freedom, which was, pretty funny, actually. I don't think he meant for it to be funny. But, fair play to you, mate. That's certainly something. It was... let's talk about the actual fight itself, and I'll talk about the post-fight stuff, I guess, afterwards. But Bryce Mitchell defeats Dan Ige after earlier this year, or was it last year? Last year, getting absolutely mollywopped by Ilia Topuria. Comes back and still has a lot of the same flaws there. And I still think, Dan Ige exposed or showed that he still has them quite clearly. I think it's going to be something that Bryce Mitchell's going to struggle with probably for most of his career now, unless he just completely refines his wrestling to, a completely dominating point whereby the striking deficiency doesn't really matter anymore. But let's talk about the fight itself. I scored it 29-28 for Bryce Mitchell. I thought the first round was pretty close. It had some really interesting stuff from Mitchell. Again, when he gets to a position, a grappling position, and it's interesting the contrast he has to someone like Mateus Gamrot in the main event at this fight night, is that Gamrot will give you some space for you to move, but he'll tightly clamp on to one thing, whereas Bryce Mitchell, when he gets a hold of you, he presses everything up against your body, like, his chest to your back, one hand on one arm, an arm around your chest from the back. It's constantly like grabbing a hold of you as much as he can, as quickly as he can. Like, he doesn't want to give you the space to move, and when he wants you to move, he'll give you enough space for you to then move into the position that he wants. So it happened in the first round. There was a moment where he wanted Ige to move so that he could get into a mount position from there, and he let Ige move a little bit from the cage, which basically just pulled him away from the back, but Mitchell still had a really tight clamp on everything else, so he only had one leg free. And when you're moving away, it's kind of almost like you're moving, but you're kind of just spinning yourself around, in a sense. And Mitchell did that really, really well. He did that really well in the third round as well, which I thought was probably the clearest round of them all that I gave to Mitchell. I thought the first, it's debatable. You could maybe make a debate for Ige to Mitchell. It was the second round. I find it quite interesting, the fan viewing mental experience of watching a round like that. So, for example, the first half of that round was clearly Dan Ige. Beat him up on the feet. Ref had to step in so that Mitchell could get his eye checked because he was getting pretty busted up. All clear, good to go. And then Mitchell, for the last 2 minutes, got a takedown, out-grappled Ige. Didn't really land anything, though. But I think people think that Mitchell won that round because of the last 2 minutes. But imagine if you flipped it round and Mitchell had the first 2 minutes on the feet. On the ground, I should say. Like, Mitchell had taken Ige down for the first 2 minutes. Then Ige gets up and then lands on him in the same way that he did for the first 2 and a bit minutes of this round. You'd probably would favour Ige, but we have to remember it is damage that we're looking for him. Mitchell didn't land any in that second round, and actually throughout the fight, he didn't really land a huge amount. I know he went for a sub attack at the end of the second, but wasn't particularly close or convincing in my mind. There wasn't any panic on Ige's end to fight it. he was in a comfortable enough position whereby Bryce was not going to get head and arm choke at that stage or that position. It just wasn't particularly close, any of the sub-attacks in that round, or in any of the rounds, actually, to be honest. And again, this is the issue for a guy like Mitchell, is that, like, what damage are you going to get off in these fights? Like, when, you're fighting Edson Barbosa, who you take him down and you can basically do what you like, attack whatever subs and get 10-8 rounds just from sub-attacks, against a guy like Dan Ige, who's constantly fighting positions, and you're not really getting much off in terms of ground and pound. It can be difficult to envision how someone like Bryce Mitchell will get to a title. I know he's 28 years old, so plenty of time left to do that. I just think that, when he gets the upper part of the division, I struggle to see exactly how he's going to get the better of some of these guys. Like, there's just not enough there in terms of attacks on the ground, punches on the ground. There's just really not enough there for me. And I think that's what he should really work and develop on, because if I think about it, he hasn't really added a huge amount since that Barbosa fight, other than the loss to Topuria. His striking defense is still, not great. There was that combination that Ige landed at the start of the second, where you could see it on Mitchell's face how uncomfortable he was. And yeah, I'm really. It was a good comeback win against a good fighter. But again, I think now if he moves up and faces someone like Movsar Evloev, or, I'd love to see him against someone like Diego Lopez, if anything, that new grappler that Evloev fought, or Brian Ortega. I don't know. I just think there's probably not enough there, really. I don't know. It's going to be hard to see a way for him to get to the title, other than, Volkanovski moves up. Which he will do, most likely after the Topuria fight. I think also I just doubt. Yeah, I just doubt his ability to add wrinkles to his game, or or stuff that he can consistently go to, because he's just not really shown it, actually. To be honest, it just seems to be more of a solidifying of what he had before. If you go back to watch the Barbosa fight, or the Charles Rosa fight, or the Andre Fili fight, there's not been any big changes or leaps there for Bryce Mitchell. He's a young man, he's at a young age, and this should be the time that you do that as a fighter. You should be adding these big changes to your game, because when you get to your 30s as a fighter, it tends to be more of a refinement. And just striking wise, I'm struggling to see it. I do believe now that he was completely compromised when he fought Topuria, when you just even look at the striking. Maybe not completely compromised, actually, I take that back, but there was some level of being compromised, because even striking wise today, he just had a lot more pep on his shots. Should we look at the post fight, because that was nutty? I will agree with him, those fires are man-made. Just not in the way that he thinks that they are. It's definitely not a massive laser. Jesus Christ, what is up with this guy? But he's an odd fellow, obviously. He's super Christian, which is odd enough for me. But then he, donates money to the charity stuff. He seems to be quite like he did that after one of his other fights. I can't remember which one, but he said he would donate his entire purse to some cause or whatever. I can't remember. So yeah, he seems to be quite a charitable fellow, which I respect and appreciate. This is about as diplomatic as I can be about a guy like Bryce Mitchell, really. And yeah, this is just me being a polite Englishman at this stage. That was very uncomfortable for Ige. You can see he was just like, please, Bryce, let me go. I just want to walk away from this. And he was probably like, thank God I don't have to actually lead this prayer thing. And he had to sort of like awkwardly sort of like kneel there with Bryce as he went into the prayer. Yeah, impressive from Bryce Mitchell, but I think there's a limit to how far he's going to be able to go. I actually do think against guys like, I don't know, even like a Calvin Cater, if he manages to come back, or Arnold Allen, do you foresee him being able to beat them? Because I personally don't, to be honest. I think his striking defence is just so wide open. It's so open. Anyway, thank you for listening. There'll be some more highlights and stuff to listen to later today and tomorrow. Leave a comment, like, subscribe. We will get back to you there. Email us at holdonbrother69@gmail.com. And yeah, let me know what you thought of this Bryce Mitchell performance.